Okay, Jai Hind students, welcome back. So today we will be discussing the concept of decentralization, right? So as you have liked it in the previous video, you love listening stories and you get the concept also clear. So today again I am going to start with the story. So the story is about a hero, and this hero is Mr. Amit Kumar Singh. So Mr. Amit Kumar Singh starts a departmental store. This departmental store in a near market near to his own home, and he personally could supervise every aspect of the store, and he is present in that store from morning to evening. Fortunately, over a period of time, his business start growing, and he decide to start another departmental store at another place in the same city. So in order to keep a close supervision, he divides his time, and he is personally present in the first store in the first half, and he is giving his time, half of his time means the second half of the day in the another department. Since he wishes to keep a very tight control over both the stores, so he somehow managed the work by hopping between these two departmental stores. Half of the time he is giving here, and half of the time he is giving in another department. So after a few years, what happens that down the line he decides to open 5 more departmental stores in different cities like this. So consequently he finds it is very difficult for him now to present in all the stores at appropriate time to take all the decision himself. So he decides to visit the different stores on different days. So at the same time he realizes that he needs to put each store under a charge of a responsible person, right, who is competent to take independent decision and actions in his absence so as to ensure smooth running of the business. Consequently, what happens that each store is placed under the charge of a manager who is allowed to run their stores autonomously by deciding about the product which they have to promote, then the appointment of a staff, ways to handle the customers' complaints, all these things, So as these managers have a deeper knowledge of the local situations, so it enables them to take all such type of decision effectively, keeping in view the local circumstances and customers' need. So a decentralized approach helps to improve customer service and at the same time serves to boost the morale and increase the job satisfaction of the store manager also, right? So as it empowers them to innovate and use their initiative. So what has happened in this story, as the size of an organization grows beyond a certain level, it becomes essential to decentralize its working. So what happens in the practical life, that decentralization may not be considered absolutely essential like delegation. This is because the small and medium sized organization may be managed with the help of delegation. However, as the size of the organization will grow beyond a certain level, it becomes difficult to run the business smoothly unless it is decentralized. So what can we say about the decentralization? We can say that the decentralization refers to the delegation of authority throughout all the levels of the organization, right? As Lewis Allen says that decentralization refers to systematic effort to delegate to the lowest level all authority except that which can be exercised at central points. Right. So he said that decentralized does not mean that you will pass on all the authority. Some authorities you will keep at the top level, is the central points, and rest of the authority you will give to your subordinate. Now let us understand this definition given by the Henry Ford. So he says that everything which goes to increase the importance of a subordinate's role He is focusing here on the subordinate's role is being increased, then it is decentralization, right? So, or you can say that whatever is reducing the role of the subordinate, it is called as centralization. Now, seeing these two words, centralization and decentralization, so before we talk more about the decentralization, let us first now understand that what is centralization and what is decentralization. Basically, what happens in the centralization, you see the power is centered in one hand or at the top level, and from here all the instructions are going in the different direction. So this one person is powerful here, and in decentralization what happens, it is the power has been delegated, like all these centers are having sufficient power, so they can use it. Or we can say that when the decision making authority is retained with the top level management, it is centralization, and when the systematic dispersal of authority has been done to the lowest level except that which can be exercised at central point, then we call it decentralization, right? If we have to differentiate between these two on the basis of the suitability, we will say that the centralization is not suitable for large organization, but decentralization is suitable for large organization. Then in centralization what happens, that the top management will make decision and there is no initiative for the subordinate, right? And in decentralization, decision making authority is retained with all levels of management. In centralization, there is no relief for top management. They themselves provide the details to the subordinate, so they are involved in all the decision making. But in decentralization, there is a relief to the top management and subordinates actively participate in decision making. So this is the basic idea of the centralization and decentralization. Now I think you have understood the concept. So in centralization what happens, that the major decision, or you can say all the decision would be taken by the top level of the management, correct? Now if you take the example of an organization which is decentralized, so what will happen in this case? Suppose he is the general manager and he is production manager and he is marketing manager and he is finance manager, right? So what is going to happen in this case, that all the decision related to production department would be taken by this personnel manager. So there will be no interference of general manager in production department as per the authority and responsibility given to the production manager, correct? Same way, marketing manager would be taking all the decision related to marketing. Finance manager would be taking all the decision related to finance. So there would be no, he need not to ask for each and everything to the general manager. So this is called decentralization. But in centralization, these people have to take the permission first from the general manager, and then only he can do whatever instruction have been given regarding production. In centralization, whatever this general manager will decide will give the instruction to marketing manager, and marketing manager had to execute those things which the decision has been taken by the general manager. So in this way it is called centralization. Now one more thing is very important to understand here, that centralization and decentralization are relative terms. So an organization is centralized when decision making authority is retained by the higher level management, whereas if the decentralization means the organization will be called decentralized when such authority is delegated to these people. So everything is being decided by the top level management, higher level of management, it is centralization. But if you have divided the organization into 4 groups, 5 groups, different departments, and you have given them the legitimate amount of autonomy, then we call it that there is decentralization. Yes, now this is also very equally important. The complete centralization or complete decentralization are both unrealistic. This does not actually happen in practical life. See, complete centralization means what? It is concentration of all decision making function at the apex of the management hierarchy, which is not possible, right? Otherwise, what would happen that this will obviate means this will remove the need for a management hierarchy. There would be no need of management hierarchy. This kind of organization structure would be in all the organization. One is the head of the organization and rest all are the employees to listen his instruction, right? There would be no such type of need that he is the head of the organization like general manager and he is having these three departments, these three point of power, these are the further division of the organization, and then these people are governing these people are managing these people, right? So complete decentralization would imply the delegation of all decision making function to the lower level of the hierarchy. Now what will happen is, suppose everything is to be decided by these people, right? Then what is the need of general manager? So why this post is there then? So this also would remove the need for higher managerial position. So in this way we can say that the complete centralization or complete decentralization both are not possible in practical world. So both the scenarios are, you can say that these are unrealistic, right? So based on this discussion, we can say that an organization can never be completely centralized or completely decentralized. So there is a need for a balance between coexisting forces. In centralization and decentralization, both should be there in the organization to run it smoothly, to run it successfully. Got it? So if this point is clear, then we can talk about the importance of decentralization. Decentralization is not just mere transfer of authority to the lower level of management. Basically, it is a philosophy that implies selective dispersal of authority because it propagates the belief that people are competent, people are capable, people are resourceful. They can assume the responsibility for the effective implementation of their decision, right? So this philosophy recognizes the decision makers' need for autonomy, and the management, however, needs to be careful in selecting the decision which will be pushed down to lower level and those that will be retained by higher level. So we will discuss that what is the basically difference between the delegation and decentralization later on, but first understand that what is the importance of decentralization. So the first point, it says that it develops the initiative among subordinate. So subordinate starts taking initiative. They become forthcoming. They develop a self-reliance. They develop a confidence among them. And you know why it happens? Because the lower level of management has been given more freedom. They keep on facing the challenge, so they have to develop the solutions to solve those problems which they face. And definitely the decentralization will help them to identify the dynamic leaders. Second point of importance is that the decentralization develops managerial talent for the future. So decentralization basically gives us the future manager. As we can see here, that the decentralization is giving a kind of formal training to the subordinate, and naturally this will enhance their skills. This will equip them to be the future manager who can handle the issues, the problem independently. And through the decentralization, we can easily find out that whom we can promote, who can be given the higher positions, like this. And we can easily understand this part also, that who should not be promoted, who don't have this capability to assume greater responsibility. We can say that through decentralization we can teach management to the subordinate in real life situations. Then the third importance of the decentralization is that we can make quick decisions. In centralized organization, what happens that you have to look for each and every decision to the higher authority. But in decentralization, as you have autonomy to make the decision, so now it is very easy for the people to make the decision. So naturally it will reduce the speed of decision making, and we can face all the challenges of the dynamic operating conditions. As I said that we need not to take the approval for the higher authority. So naturally decision would be faster. And if you remember that we have played in the class this Chinese whisper game. So what happens that when we pass on the message using a long chain, then what happens, the message or the information get distorted. And here you are taking the decision by yourself, so that chance is also not there. Yes, very true. This is actually a relief to the top level of management. Like for each and everything, the people won't come to the senior manager. So he has sufficient time to meditate, right? So decentralization comes as a relief to the top level of management. They can relax. As in decentralization, we don't require too much direct supervision. Subordinate has been given sufficient amount of the freedom to act and decide some related things to them. In decentralization, we do not go for the direct control or direct supervision. Personal supervision is not required, but we may develop certain tools. Like there are certain tools by which we can understand that the growth is taking place. See, when the top level of management is not involved too much into day-to-day activities, if they are free, they have peace of mind, then only they can think about the broader vision. They can think beyond those things which keep them occupied always. And actually this is the importance of the decentralization, that you need not to check your lower level of management at each and every point. Okay, till now we have understood that decentralization actually gives more and more strength, more power to the lower level of management. So what will happen? That this will actually foster the sense of competition among the department. They will do what is best suited for their department. And in this way, if all these departments are doing their best, so what will happen if all these are doing their best? So ultimately it will lead to the best for the organization as a whole. So it is very clear that if each department, each individual of the organization is growing, ultimately our organization will grow. So this actually facilitates the growth of the organization. This point is very important, as normally people feel that if we have centralization, then there would be better control. But actually it is a myth. Decentralization gives you a better control. How? In decentralization, we can evaluate performance at each level, and we can make individual accountable for their performance, for their result. So what happens that the achievement of the organizational objective is being contributed by each department, right? So all the departments contributing towards their objective, ultimately it leads to the achievement of the organizational objective. And then you keep on getting the feedback from all levels. So naturally this also will help to analyze the variance, and it will improve our operations. So in decentralization, it is true that the challenge is to fixing up the accountability of the performance. But once it is done, then there is no need of further control. you can ensure the better control. And to meet out this challenge of fixing up the accountability, you have to develop such type of controlling system like balance scorecard, management information system, and this all confirms that there is a proper control in the organization. So it is being ensured by the decentralization only, that the management is thinking about the innovative performance measurement system. So now if we have to conclude, we can say that though there is a lot of importance, lot of benefits in the decentralization, but we have to be very careful while applying this, because sometime it may lead to the organizational disintegration. Because if the department starts operating in their own guidelines, so sometimes this may be not as per the interest of the organization, as we discussed it in divisional structure, you remember, conflict of interest. So as a conclusive remarks, I can say that decentralization must always be balanced with centralization in areas of major policy decision. So some of the amount should be, some of the power, some of the decision must be centralized, and then you can go for the decentralization in the organization. At the beginning of the discussion, I said that we would be comparing the delegation with the decentralization. Now it is the time to have a understanding of the difference between delegation and decentralization. So naturally we will take some of the basis to understand it. So first one is nature. So basically the delegation's nature is what? It is a compulsory act, right? Why? Because there is no individual who can say that I can do all the tasks at my own. So this is very important that you have to delegate some of his authority, some of his. Now when it comes to the nature of the decentralization, it is an optional policy decision. If you wish to decentralization, it is your choice. If you do not want to, you want to keep the centralization in the organization, you can go ahead. Like for smaller organization, centralization is good. So it is the top level management which will decide that whether I have to go for the decentralization or not. Now the second basis on which we can differentiate between delegation and decentralization is the freedom of action. Like in delegation, most of the control is in the hand of the superior. So there is very less freedom in the hand of the subordinate. So in delegation, more control. In decentralization, less control over the executive. So there is a greater freedom of action in case of decentralization, and there is less freedom of action in case of delegation. Got it? Now if you have to differentiate on the basis of the status, you say that delegation is basically a process which is followed to share the burden of work or to share the task. And if we have to talk about the decentralization, the status is what? That decentralization is actually a result of the policy decision of the top level management. Correct? Now if you have to compare between the delegation and decentralization on the basis of the scope, we'll say that delegation has a narrow scope and decentralization has a wider scope. Why? Because here the delegation is limited between superior and subordinate only. So if something goes wrong, it is in between the superior and subordinate, right? So it is affecting the relationship of a superior and his subordinate, right? But in case of decentralization, the scope is wide. Why? Because it is actually the extension of delegation to the lowest level of management, right? So in case of decentralization, the whole organization would get affected. Okay, now if it is asked that what is the purpose of the delegation, what is the purpose of the decentralization, we can say that the purpose of the delegation is to reduce the burden of the manager, right? Because he cannot do his entire work, so he is giving some of his power to the, say, subordinate, right? And in decentralization, what happens? It is to increase the role of the subordinate, right? As in the organization, the subordinate are being given more autonomy. So we can say the purpose of the decentralization is to increase the role of the subordinate, and here the purpose is to reduce the burden of the top level of management, right? So here, or we can say, we can have what more, like only 5 basis has been given here. If it is asked for 6 marks question, we can increase one more. We can have here a basis as focus, correct? You can write here. So in focus, what you will say that in delegation the focus is top level of management, and in decentralization the focus is subordinate. Focus is the employees, the lower level, middle level management. You want to improve them through decentralization. So here the focus is middle level of management, supervisory level of management, and here the focus is top level of management, correct? So with this we come to the end of the delegation and decentralization concept. We understood it now. So in this way we have completed now the unit 5 organizing. Everything is almost complete now. We discussed the concept and importance of organizing. We discussed the process of the organizing. Then we talked about the functional and divisional structure of the organization. And then this finally we discussed the delegation and decentralization. So almost everything is completed now. Now we will be discussing the case studies related to this chapter in our next classes. Now the challenge for you is that you make such type of questions, objective type question, or you can go for framing a case study also from this topic and send it to me. Thank you very much, students. Keep watching my channel.